His family name is Edson Orantes do Nascimento, but people call him Pelé. He is the #1 player in the story of soccer. In 1,363 games, he scored 1,264 goals. With Brazil, he won the World Cup 3 times. He visited 88 countries, and his picture was in every newspaper. But Pelé is not only a famous soccer player. He knows Spanish, Italian, English, and French. He writes music, and he works for the Brazilian government. Today, Pelé is famous. In 1950, he was a boy of 10 with no shoes. This is his story. Early years. Edson Orantes do Nascimento came into the world on the night of October 23rd, 1940. His family called him Dico. They lived in a small house in Três Corações, Brazil. Dico has soccer player's legs, his father said. He's going to be a doctor, not a soccer player, Dico's mother, Celeste, said. Celeste was angry. Don Dino, Dico's father, was a soccer player, but he didn't make much money. Don Dino smiled. There were problems in the family about soccer, but there was a lot of love in the house, too. In 1944, the manager of Bauru Atlético, a big soccer club, talked to Don Dino. "We want a good soccer player," the man said. "It's not much money, but there's work in the town too. Do you want the job?" Don Dino said yes, and the family moved to Bauru. The manager was wrong about one thing. There was no work for Don Dino in the town. He only played soccer, and the family had the same money problems. But Dico was happy in Bauru with his new friends. They played their first game of soccer in Rua Rubens Arruda, a street near Dico's house. Their football was an old newspaper. Little Dico played a lot of soccer. Celeste wasn't happy about this. "There's no money in the game," she said. Dico smiled. His mother was right. He loved soccer, but he didn't want to be a soccer player. He wanted to work at the airport. He often went there and looked at the airplanes. But Dico's first job wasn't in a soccer stadium or an airport. It was at Bauru Station in 1948. He cleaned shoes. In that year, things were difficult for the family. But then, Don Dino started work in a doctor's office. He cleaned the building and answered the telephone. In the afternoons, Dico often visited his father. "In 10 years, you're going to be a young man," Don Dino said one day. "What do you want to do?" "I want to work with airplanes," Dico said. "Okay, but school is important for that," said his father. Later that year, Deco started school. He wasn't a good student. He only stayed in school because he wanted a job at the airport. But one day, an airplane came down near the school. Deco and his friends went to the doctor's office and looked in one of the windows. The man from the airplane was dead. Deco never talked about a job with airplanes again. A new name. The important thing for Deco now was soccer. Evenings and weekends, he played with his friends. In the afternoons, he was with Don Dino. Don Dino was his soccer teacher, and Deco was a very good student. After 2 years, Deco was the #1 young player in Baru. His friends started to call him Pelé. Where does the name come from? People often ask. Pelé doesn't know. In 1951, Pelé started a club, September 7, with his friends. People called them the team with no shoes. They wanted to play in Baru Atletico's championship for young teams, but the shoes were a problem. One day, a father of one of the players came with shoes for the team. "Today, I'm giving you a new name, Americano," he said. "Now they can't call you the team with no shoes." Americano played very well and won the championship. After the final, Don Dino looked at his son and smiled. "You played a beautiful game, Deco," he said. Valdemar de Brito. Baru Atletico liked Pelé's beautiful game too. They wanted him for the club's new team of young players, Baquino. The team manager was Valdemar de Brito, a famous man in Brazilian soccer. Pelé was very happy. Valdemar was a good manager and a good teacher. In 1953, Baquino won the Baru Young Team Championship. After this, Valdemar moved away. Pelé was very sorry. 1 year later, Pelé finished school and started to work in a shoe factory. At weekends, he played for Baquino, but he didn't like the new manager. 1954 was a bad year. In the winter of the new year, Valdemar came to Pelé's house. He wanted to talk to the family. "Your son is 15 now," he said. "He's a very good soccer player. He can try for a job with Santos." Don Dino and Pelé were happy. Santos was a very famous club in Brazil. Celeste didn't like it, but she said yes. Some days later, Don Dino and Pelé went to Santos on the train. "The Santos players aren't going to like me," Pelé said. But there was no problem. Pelé played well, and the club was happy with its new player. Pelé was happy too. After some weeks, He had a good friend on the team. His name was Zito. Pelé wasn't in the first team, but one day, a first-team player, Vasconcelos, had an injury. "Let's put young Pelé in the first team," the manager said. Pelé played well and stayed in the first team. He scored his first goal for them on September 7th, 1956. After that, he started to score a lot of goals. The team were very happy. In June 1957, they played in the Maracanã Championship. Pelé scored 8 goals. Suddenly, he was famous. "Thank you, Valdemar," said Pelé.